So to everyone joined or joining in, thank you so much for attending today. We're really excited to have you all here for our first session of our new wage subsidy info session series for employers. My name is Leila Bonner. I am the Employer Relations Assistant here at the Career Development Center at KPU, Kwantlen Polytechnic University. We're very glad to have you a part of what's happening today. Before we get started, I am going to do a quick territorial acknowledgement. If you'll just bear with me a moment while I make sure I have my notes in front of me. So here at Kwantlen Polytechnic, we respectfully acknowledge that we live, work, and study in a region that overlaps with the unceded traditional and ancestral First Nations territories of the Musqueam, Katzie, Semiahmoo, Tsawwassen, Kaikite, and Coquitlam peoples, and with the lands of the Kwantlen First Nation, which gifted its name to this university. We share our name with Kwantlen First Nation, and the word Kwantlen means tireless runner and is reflected in the university's motto, through tireless effort, knowledge, and understanding. So thank you very much for attending today. We're really excited to have you with us. This is an ongoing funding series. We're going to have a session per month, each focusing on a different funding organization and being able to go over the information pertaining to what funding they offer for hiring students. And so for this month, we are very excited to have with us a representative from the Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, Susan McLaughlin, who's going to be presenting today. Just want to go over a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we give Susan the floor. Mentioned this as we were opening up the call today, but please be sure to keep yourself on mute for the duration of the funding presentation, just to avoid distracting noise, make sure that we can all pay attention to the great information Susan's going to share. Also, we will have a Q&A portion after Susan's presentation where you'll be able to ask questions or get clarification on anything you heard today. So please just hold on to your questions that you have until that part of the event. You're also welcome to put them into the chat, and we can review them as they come up during the Q&A part of the event. With all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Susan McLaughlin from the Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium to take it away and give us a little bit of information on their great Work Integrated Learning Works program. Susan, I'll stop sharing and you'll be able to go ahead and share your screen for your presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. So happy to be here and to be able to share some information with you about programs that are in place to help you engage with students, post-secondary students specifically. So I'm super happy to be here. Thank you so much to KPU for the invitation, and I am grateful for each of you choosing to spend some time from your day with us as well. So we will today give you a brief overview of EMC, let you know a little bit more about us, but specifically our WillWorks post-secondary student work placement program, a program to help fund and provide wage subsidies for employers leveraging student talent at the post-secondary level. And then, of course, there will be, as introduced, time for Q&A. So if you have questions, please write them in the chat, or at the end we'll have a time for some dialogue and questions, and I'm hopefully able to answer any of the questions that you may have today. So without further ado, we'll get started and introduce you a little bit to EMC, but more specifically to our student work placement program. So about EMC, EMC is Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, and we're a unique not-for-profit focused on the manufacturing sector and helping the manufacturing sector remain competitive and grow. We're an organization consisting of members and non-members that got its start 25 years ago in Owen Sound, Ontario, and now have expanded to include consortium regions from coast to coast. So we are one of the largest manufacturing organizations in North America, and we host about 1,000 virtual and/or in-person events annually. A total audience of a lot of manufacturers across the country, and really representing the manufacturing sector, all levels of sophistication, all sizes, and all sectors. So being able to represent a very diverse industry, and again, diversity in terms of coast to coast. So I do want to share our missions, vision, and values with you as well. And I'll let you read some of these, but just the main goal of EMC and what we strive to do is to help the manufacturing industry remain competitive and grow. One of the ways that that EMC does that is bringing manufacturers together to leverage wise practices and to learn from each other, which you see talking about cooperation, communication, innovation, and the willingness to support others. We also have started to get into delivering projects that can help the manufacturing sector. A lot of our programs and initiatives are related to work integrated learning and or connecting youth and new employees to jobs within the sector. So again, that's a brief snapshot of EMC. I myself am located about an hour outside of Owen Sound, Ontario, near Tobermory. But EMC does have a presence across the country. So we have my colleague, David Monroe, who is our Manufacturing Consortium Manager, representing Western Canada and located in British Columbia. So we're a small but mighty organization, again, with that goal to help the manufacturing sector be competitive on a worldwide scale. Excuse me. Today, we are here to talk about the Student Work Placement Program. Excuse me there. So EMC is the preferred partner for the Government of Canada to administer their Student Work Placement Program to Canada's manufacturing related subsectors and supply chain employers. So EMC is one of multiple delivery partners across the country. There is approximately about 18 delivery partners now for the Student Work Placement Program, all focused on a wide variety of different industries and some that aren't industry specific and are really there to support employers engaging and leveraging post-secondary student talent. To date, so EMC joined the Student Work Placement Program family in 2020, and since that time have supported over 3,500 student placements, and we do look forward to supporting more in the upcoming terms. And if there's anyone else that's having trouble hearing me, just let me know. But we've got, you're all right, Leela, in hearing? Oh, perfect. All right, so a little bit about the Wilworks Student Work Placement Program. And I should provide a bit of an introduction here as well. I can speak from experience on multiple different levels when we talk about leveraging post-secondary student talent. I am a product of the co-op system, attending college in Ontario and being a co-op student during my education there. That co-op placement really did help me learn about an industry and really gain some valuable work experience that allowed me to then choose what area might be the best fit for me after graduation and connect with employers for future opportunities in terms of employment as well. So I am a product and a proud product of the co-op system within the post-secondary landscape in Canada. And I also have worked for institutions, spending the last 2 decades before joining EMC, working at a college in Ontario as well. So I really have been able to see the benefit and the win-win situation that co-op and work integrated learning as a whole provides to employers and to students, and being able to learn from each other and really have a win-win equation for everyone involved with the situation. Sorry, I had to put that in there for really knowing the value and loving the co-op and work integrated learning experience at post-secondary institutions across Canada. So the Wilworks Student Work Placement Program and the SWIP program as a whole is really a program that was introduced to incentivize employers to engage with and leverage post-secondary student talent. So to increase the number of student placements that are available to post-secondary students taking part in a work integrated learning experience. So the SWIP program and the Wilworks SWIP program is a wage subsidy program that provides 50 or 70% of a student's wages with a cap of $5,000 or $7,000. When we're looking at EMC's Wilworks SWIP program, the application is through EMC's Wilworks SWIP platform, which is powered by Magnet. And the program is able to support placements a minimum of 6 weeks in duration, up to a maximum of 16 weeks in duration. And the 16-week really aligns well with the academic term. So if employers on the call are interested in engaging co-op students, as an example, that 16-week placement is there and available to be able to leverage some funding while engaging those students in the co-op work term. Employers with EMC's Will Work SWIP program are responsible for the student recruitment and selection of their students. And I can attest, I'm sure KPU has some great students and can provide information and support. If you've never engaged co-op student talent before and/or would like some more information or support, I'm sure that the representatives at KPU are there and happy to assist through that process. But EMC does not have a pool of students waiting to fill these roles, but we do connect employers to institutions across the country that may have a fit. And KPU is one of those institutions that would have co-op students available and can provide more information and support around that topic. We also know that sometimes co-op students will join a company or an organization for longer than one academic term. So some programs at post-secondary institutions will have back-to-back work terms that may run 8, 12, or 16 months in duration. So back-to-back work terms, if you have a co-op student joining the organization for back-to-back work terms, it is possible to apply for more than one wage subsidy. It would just be submitting an application per term. And the reimbursement of the funds happens at the end of the term or the end of that 16-week work placement. So employers will submit an application, will review the application, provide some conditional approval, ensure that the student is eligible for that wage subsidy, provide communication throughout the term, and then at the end of the academic term or the end of that placement, we'll connect with employers and communicate with them about what to do to submit for the wage subsidy at the end of the work placement. So some sample job titles. I find that when we talk about manufacturing specifically, a lot of times our minds go to those engineering type roles or more of those roles that would be related to production. And the Will Work SWIP program supports the industry as a whole, and it can support all types of student placements within the organization. So if you're interested in onboarding or you have the capacity to onboard accounting, business analyst, chemical engineering, data analytics, we've had drone avionics come in as sample job titles, ergonomics, marketing, digital, graphic design, product designer, supply chain. So there's lots of diversity in terms of what types of student placements can be supported through the WillWorks SWIP program. So if you are a manufacturing and/or allied industry employer, it does not need to be an engineering or production-related role. There may be the opportunity for you to engage with post-secondary work integrated learning student talent in other areas across your organization that you may not have thought of or considered. So for those of you that are more visual in terms of your learning style, there's a little word cloud as well that kind of shows you some of the job titles. You can see the engineering and student tend to be ones that we see a lot in our job titles when applications are coming in for the Will Work SWIP program. But again, we see a lot of positions as well that are related to other roles. So it's important to keep an open mind. And if you've had success as an organization leveraging student talent in a specific area, you may be able to expand and onboard co-op students or post-secondary work integrated learning students in other areas of your business as well. So the wage subsidy that's available through the Will Work Student Work Placement Program is 50 or 70% of the student's wages. So there is a cap of $5,000 or $7,000. And the increased subsidy is for students self-identifying in an underrepresented group. So it does list the groups there on the screen. I always encourage employers to kind of think when you're applying for the Will Work SWIP program, that the wage subsidy available is that $5,000 or 50% of the student salary up to $5,000, and understanding that if the student chooses to self-identify in one of the underrepresented groups, then the increased subsidy may be available. And you'll see new is in red type there on the screen. So the student work placement program as a whole, I mentioned, was introduced to help incentivize employers to offer more positions and student positions than they had in the past. So there is a line of questioning that employers will do when they go through the application, and it's really asking about how many students did you onboard the year before first taking advantage of the student work placement program. So we outline that very clearly in the application procedure, and it's very specific employer to employer, but it's looking at if this is the first time you've ever participated or leveraged SWIP funding, then we would ask you about how many co-op students you hired last year for the fiscal, and then the ability to fund any students over and above that original number. So we kind of set a baseline for employers, and then that helps employers know how many student placements they may be eligible for funding for in the upcoming fiscal year. And a little bit about student eligibility. So the Student Work Placement Program, and this will be for EMC's Will Works program, the student must be registered full-time or part-time at a recognized post-secondary institution. So KPU definitely fits in that category. And as I mentioned, with the students' job titles being able to be quite diverse, there is no specification about what program the student needs to be studying. So they can be studying in a program from any area, and there's no stipulation on program eligibility as long as they're registered full-time or part-time. Canadian citizen, permanent residents, or persons with whom refugee protection has been conferred. So domestic students, permanent residents, international students are not eligible under the Student Work Placement Program. So that's something to keep in mind for employers looking into the program. Participants need to be legally entitled to work in Canada, and they need to have an official will component as part of their academic study plan. So this is where if a student is in a co-op program and they're doing a co-op work term as part of their academic plan, that's a really easy example of a will component that's recognized by the institution. We also may have students that are doing applied research projects with employers. Internships is another one that we sometimes see, but it is important to note that the will, and when we say will, that's work integrated learning. So the work integrated learning experience or placement needs to be part of the student's academic plan and connected to their education. And co-op, again, is a great example of that. So what is required? This is funded through the Government of Canada, and I will tell you that EMC does what we can to limit the number of things that we need to collect from employers while still meeting all of the funding requirements and documentation requirements of the funder. So what you will do is employers submit an online application listing some information about the employer, as well as information about the position itself. And then you'll receive information about what we need to kind of be able to review that application for conditional approval. And that will be an employer acceptance form, a student information and consent form, student proof of enrollment, and an employer attestation. So that allows us to review the application for eligibility. We're ensuring that the student, based on the document submitted, is also eligible, and we will move the application to a set ready status, meaning everything that we've seen looks good, and then your job as employers is just to offer a quality work experience for those students. Once we approach the end of the term, EMC will communicate with all of our employers and provide you instructions on what's required to process the wage subsidy. And at the end of the term, we will request the first and last pay stubs of the term for the student, an invoice, and the employer and the student complete an exit survey that's provided directly from the funder. So that's something, the employer and student exit survey is something that you'll see that is the same across all of the delivery partners as a requirement of the funder. Application timelines. So interestingly enough, and I'm sure a lot of employers who have engaged or leveraged post-secondary student talent previously know that you're constantly working about a term in advance. So for employers that are interested in hosting post-secondary work integrated learning students for the summer, now is a great time to be connecting with co-op departments, let's say at institutions, to be arranging if you haven't already. So we also have recently opened our application for summer. So we tend to align the opening of our applications to those academic terms as well. So employers can submit an application now for the summer. It will allow us to provide a conditional approval, so we can review the employer side of the application and say, yes, this looks good. Once you've secured your student and hired your student, that's when we'll be able to confirm the student eligibility and get you started on a fantastic work placement for that student. So again, we usually run that term in advance, much like the recruitment process does at institutions. So yeah, you can apply now for if you're interested in onboarding a post-secondary student for the summer term. And what employers have to say. I often think I can tell you anything that I want, but we do hear a lot from employers, and we receive testimonials and feedback that we really value. It allows us to improve our processes if that's what the feedback is focused on, but it also allows us to share information with you. So I mentioned we try and make the process as less onerous as possible for employers. And one of the things with EMC is often you're able to get a response from us very quickly via email, and or my colleague Wendy deals with a lot of the employers, and often they'll call her number and Wendy will answer. And sometimes people are surprised that they're getting a real person on the other end of that phone, but they are. And the WillWorks program is, I've mentioned it already, but the ability to leverage student talent. Students come into your organization with fresh perspective and new ideas and a willingness to learn. And being able to get a wage subsidy to support incorporating those students into your organization is just an additional benefit to what's already a win-win situation for employers and for students. Questions, and I do see we're getting some questions through the chat. I'm going to provide you, we have a lot of questions that we often get asked, so I'll address some of those, and then absolutely we'll turn to specific questions that have come up today if they haven't been answered already. So starting off with some frequently asked questions. So who is an eligible employer? And for EMC's WillWorks SWIP program, we do focus on the manufacturing industry and allied sectors. So if a company has a NACE that's 31 to 33, that's the manufacturing industry. But we're also able to support other allied industries. So if you think of a company that's somewhere along the supply chain, perhaps you're an organization that provides preventative maintenance to manufacturing employers, you're doing some consulting with manufacturing employers, that's kind of where the EMC WillWorks SWIP program is focused. If you are a company that's attending this session and you're not within the manufacturing sector and aren't related to the manufacturing sector at all, I mentioned we're part of a SWIP family, so there's about 18 delivery partners across the country. So there are resources, and I'm sure that KPU can put you in touch with other funding partners, and I believe they're going to have some doing some of these workshops as well in this series. So if you don't fit into the manufacturing and or allied industries, the student work placement program may still be a fit for your organization. It just may be that you would leverage the funding or engage with the funding through a different delivery partner. Next question is, can employers stack different funding and still be eligible for the SWIP funding? So the short answer to this question is yes. But it does really depend on what the other funding partner is. And if they have stipulations on stacking of funding. I know, for example, in Ontario, there's a tax credit for onboarding co-op students. You're able to leverage that with the SWIP program. It's just that you're not able to receive more than what you're actually paying out for the students. So with provincial, territorial, municipal programs, it may be possible to stack. If you are being supported by another federal program, it is not possible to stack another federal program with the student work placement program. So if there's something else that's funded by the Government of Canada, it's not possible to stack that with the SWIP funding. So our co-op placements are longer than 16 weeks. Can we receive more than one wage subsidy? And the answer is yes. So if you are onboarding a student for a co-op term that's longer than that traditional academic term, it is possible to apply for back-to-back work placements. Each application is connected to a student and to a term. So if you have a student that's joining you for more than one term, you would submit multiple applications when the application platform was open then for that student. And does the student have to be in a manufacturing role to be eligible? The answer to that one is no. We're really able to support any position across the organization with the Will Work SWIP program. Are international students eligible? The answer there is no. International students are not eligible for the program. But what we say here often is it may be an opportunity to offer placements to more students and leverage even more student talent. So if you do have a student that is eligible for the SWIP program joining you, knowing that you're going to receive 50 or 70% of their salary may provide an opportunity to leverage another student in the same or a different area. So whereas international students are not eligible, receiving the wage subsidy may allow you to engage and to leverage even more student talent at your organization. Can EMC help me recruit a student? So this isn't really a yes or no question. It's a we're happy to. Again, I said we don't have a pool of qualified students waiting for these opportunities. However, we do encourage employers to leverage their existing recruitment channels. If you're already working with institutions or have relationships with institutions for securing student talent, we encourage you to continue to do that. And if you don't have a relationship with an institution, which shouldn't apply to anyone within this space based on your attendance here at KPU, but if an employer doesn't have any relationships with post-secondary institutions, we are able to make that connection. So we're happy to connect employers with different institutions and contacts at those institutions that may be able to help with their student talent needs. And additional questions. So I will open it up to any questions. Did you want me to go through the chat and look at them here?
Tell you what, why don't we if there's anyone from the floor who wants to speak up, we can go ahead and let them, raise their hand now, and we can discuss them, and then we can pivot to the chat and tackle those ones next.
I love that idea.
All right. Also, before we jump into questions, Susan, thank you so much for all that excellent information. Very wonderful, fulsome review of your program. Very glad that you were able to present on that. If anyone has any questions, feel free to pop in now. If not, I'll pivot to the chat and read out a couple of them for Susan. We'll get started there. I'll just give it a sec for people to get their thoughts. Right, not hearing anything from the floor. That is totally fine. I'm going to go ahead and reference the chat then. So we have a number of really great questions. Thank you everyone for putting your thoughts in the chat. Our first question is from Alex. I believe you might have already touched on this, Susan, but is this grant or wage subsidy, is it only for the manufacturing sector or not-for-profits, or can people from other not-for-profits and other sectors also apply?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So EMC's WillWorks SWIP program is focused on the manufacturing and the allied industries. However, we're part of a family of delivery partners across the country. So I do believe there was a link in the chat. Oops, that was added in with a list or a link to other delivery partners. So I would encourage employers that are on the call, if you're not part of or don't have a connection to the manufacturing sector, definitely look at that link that was sent, or Google SWIP, the Student Work Placement Program, and our other delivery partners will be there. So some, again, are very specific in terms of they're supporting a specific industry. There are a few as well that that don't have those industry requirements. So there are a few that are more open to support employers from multiple different sectors and don't have that as an eligibility criteria. So I would encourage you to click the link that KPU did provide through the chat if you are not from the manufacturing and allied industry sector, and there is likely a delivery partner that is focused on your industry and or is non-industry specific. So you would be able to look into leveraging funding through one of those alternate partners.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan. And just to jump in there as well, we did put the link in the chat to our page on employer funding opportunities, including the SWIP programs. But if you have any questions after this session about other sources of funding or about the EMC's WillWorks program, we will be sending out some information to all attendees, just with some of the helpful links that were mentioned today and who you can chat with next if you have questions. We would love to take any inquiries you have if you're not sure where to start or you're not sure what subsidies best fit your business. So you're also welcome to send us questions, and we'll include our team's contact information in that follow-up email as well. So fear not, we're here to help. We'll pivot back to another question. Jeffrey Keller asked in the chat, are Red Seal trades eligible as well if they're in the manufacturing sector? For example, what about welding?
So if a company had a post-secondary student on a work integrated learning experience, so if there was a welding student, for example, doing a co-op work term with your organization, that sort of position would be eligible. If the company is onboarding or has a traditional apprentice that they've registered and they're doing their training and going through their apprenticeship, that isn't eligible. So when we get into trades and apprenticeship training, it gets a little bit trickier, but how I would explain it is if the student is in a post-secondary program and they're doing a co-op work term as an example, that's the sort of experience that's eligible for the student work placement program. If it is a student that is being hired as a more traditional apprentice and are doing their in-school training throughout their apprenticeship after being registered, apprentices aren't eligible for the student work placement program. So hopefully that helps, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much, Susan. Another new question we have, which I do believe you touched on regarding net new placements and extended co-op terms. Leah Birmingham asks, how does the new position protocol work for students that are working in an 8-month co-op term? So rather than just 4 months, it's double that. And how would one reapply for them if it is not for a new position in that sense?
Yep, absolutely. So net new and the net new eligibility criteria can get a little bit confusing, and we do our best to present it in a manner and to ask questions through the application platform to help ease that. But when we speak about net new, it's not incrementally always needing to add new students to be eligible. So what we do through the questioning in the application platform is we find what year was the year before ever accessing SWIP funding through any delivery partner. That year is then set as the baseline. So if a company hired 2 students the year before ever leveraging SWIP funding, as the program stands right now, your baseline is always remaining at that 2. So it would be anyone above 2 that would be eligible for the funding. if a company has students that are joining them for back-to-back work terms, we encourage employers to count those as 2 students, because even though it's the same student, if they're joining you, because we really do think in academic terms. So when you're doing your count in terms of prospective hiring, or how many you're planning to hire in the upcoming year, if you have a student that's joining you for 8 months, or 2 academic terms, if that's how it works out for your organization, you would count that as 2 hires, because in another situation, it could be that you had different students that if you didn't have one for a longer period of time. So what I would encourage with NetNew is when you enter the application, go through the questioning, and hopefully that will assist in determining NetNew. And if you have questions as you're going through the application, we are more than happy to assist as well. But one of the things that I think some people, and me even, when I first heard about NetNew, is the thought that it has to be always new, and you have to incrementally always be adding new students, which for many organizations is not possible or sustainable. But it's always having, right now as the program is set up, your baseline number is always staying the same. So again, if you hired 2 students before ever accessing SWIP funding, and then you hire that 3rd student with the SWIP funding, you don't have to always keep adding to be eligible for funding. Hopefully that helps make a little bit of sense with a topic that's tricky to understand.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, it does sound a bit tricky, but I think you've explained it well. Hopefully, if there's any further questions, we can get that sorted out. Next question, Tanya asks, can employers apply for this wage subsidy after a student has been placed? I believe you said the answer was yes, but perhaps you can confirm for Tanya.
You are correct, yes. So at the current time, EMC's Will Work SWIP program, employers are able to apply for the funding before or after the student has started in their position. So we understand some employers may be really depending on funding to be able to offer that student experience. And then there may be other employers that aren't made aware of the opportunity until after they have already onboarded a student and they have them starting with them. So we do try and be as flexible as possible. And part of that flexibility is allowing employers to apply before or after their student is secured, as long as funding is available.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I do see our next question from Bea. Pardon me if I pronounced that wrong. Is this wage subsidy program only available for May through August for 4 months, or is it available through the rest of the year as well?
It is available through the rest of the year. Yes, so it's available all year long. And Leela, you can maybe expand a little bit. The academic terms in BC, do you have 3 throughout the year?
Yes. So just for a little bit of clarification as it relates to this, here in KPU and likely, for the rest of BC's institutions, co-op terms generally align with the traditional academic schedule as well. So we're looking at co-op terms from January to April, from May to August, and from September to December. So at any point in the year, you're always in the middle of a co-op term and preparing for the next one. Most likely you'll find that schedule is going to be the same for a lot of post-secondary institutions, especially for those that are actually accredited by CWIL Canada, which is a third-party organization. If you're accredited by CWIL Canada, there are certain regulations that you have to adhere to for accreditation, and timing is one of those. So that kind of 3 different terms throughout the year is likely going to be very similar. And I see one of our other KP staff, Michelle, she's putting in some more information about the chat if you want to learn about that further.
Awesome. Thank you. So the short answer was yes, it's all year. And then the longer answer helped to clarify that. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you, Michelle, for popping that in the chat. We have another question from Tanya who asks, are there longer terms, example, 6, 8, or 12 months? Now, Tanya, I'm not sure if you're referring to the wage subsidy or if you're referring to co-op / work and learning placements. So maybe I'll just provide clarification on the co-op term side of things, and then Susan can provide clarification on the will work side of things. So when it comes to co-op terms, each term is 4 months long. You can have a student for more than one term, which means that you could have a student for up to 8 months, which is 2 terms back to back, or up to 12 months, which would be 3 terms back to back. We do count those terms separately in terms of, the hours a student has to complete within each 4-month block. But you could technically hire a student in a work and learning opportunity for up to 12 months. It does have to be in those 4-month increments, though. So it does have to be 4 months, 8 months, or 12 months. Hopefully that provides clarification there. And then Susan, maybe you can go into the will work side of things.
And that works quite well with if you're engaging student, and the WillWorks applications also align to the academic term. So if you had a student that was joining you for those 3 academic terms back to back, then it would be 3 separate applications for the funding program. But it is possible, and there are opportunities, and I'm happy that we had it clarified on a KPU side to engage students in longer placements, which is, fantastic. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Susan. I see a couple of questions from various people about if certain industries are considered adjacent to manufacturing. Maybe I'll just list a couple of them and go slow and make so Susan, your head isn't spinning with how many things we're going over. But I see questions about construction, about companies that do prefabrication. And then I also see child and youth care. Perhaps we could just, those 3 industries, would any of those be considered adjacent according to your definition?
Maybe is the short answer to that question. And so EMC is very high touch when we are interacting with employers and when you're applying for SWIP funding. The Child and Youth Care Department doesn't seem like it would be a fit for EMC's WillWorks program. However, it may be a fit for one of the other delivery partners that are also administering the SWIP program. So that one, from the topic, I would think that one would be the least potential to be connected to the manufacturing sector. Construction really depends on if you have a connection or if you service the manufacturing industry, and that goes as well for the prefab. I think as well, and being part of that supply chain. So realistically, if an application comes in and the connection to manufacturing isn't completely visible to us, we'll connect back with the employer and confirm that our program really does serve the manufacturing and allied industry employers. And we'll provide the opportunity for you to let us know how you are connected and or how you support the manufacturing sector. So I apologize for not being able to answer that with kind of a black and white answer. However, I do think the flexibility allows a more diverse employer base to potentially be able to leverage the WillWorks SWIP funding. So I would encourage, if you have specific questions, reach out to us, let us know kind of what you do. Sometimes employers will give us their website. So we're able to go onto the website and see if there's that connection to manufacturing, and or if we're having a hard time seeing it or being able to make that connection, we'll connect with the employer and make it clear kind of what industry our program is focused on, and allow the employer the opportunity to let us know how they think they fit.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification, Susan. Appreciate you kind of thinking things through on the go here. Just in the interest of time to make sure we can read through everyone's questions and answer as much as we can. In terms of further questions of is blank industry applicable for the WillWorks program, I think what we'll do is we'll defer that kind of line of inquiry to please reach out to the WillWorks team for further discussion, because it sounds like we could fall down a bit of a rabbit hole there. Going through all these different fields, but we will provide contact information for who people who are attending today and future employers with inquiries from the WillWorks program can reach out to. So if you're not, you will have a name and hopefully some contact information to go with that for further questions about specific industries.
Perfect.
Let me just scroll down, see what other questions we have to go through today. We have a really interesting question from Bea. What is Magnet's role in this process as it relates to WillWorks? Or if you have information, I guess, on the SWIP program in general?
Yep, absolutely. So thank you for this question. And Magnet actually plays a couple of different roles within administration of the Student Work Placement Program. So when I mentioned multiple delivery partners across the country, Magnet actually does serve as a delivery partner for the Student Work Placement Program. So Magnet's role in terms of a delivery partner would be to receive applications, review applications, and disperse the wage subsidy, very similar to how EMC is the delivery partner focused on the manufacturing industry. Magnet is another delivery partner that, that isn't focused on a specific industry. So they're kind of serving a lot of employers. So that's one of the roles that Magnet has. Magnet also is powering the application platform and that connection that employers can make to students as well. So EMC's WillWork Student Work Placement Program is powered by Magnet, is how I explain it. So we have leveraged the technology that's available through Magnet, so employers are able to submit their application for EMC's WillWork SWIP program through an application platform that's powered by Magnet. So if an employer is submitting an application for EMC's WillWork SWIP program, the role Magnet is playing is a provider of the technology.
Perfect.
Hopefully that helped to clarify, because it does get tricky and confusing when Magnet's playing so many different roles within the SWIP environment. But in terms of EMC's WillWork SWIP program, they're powering our application platform.
Great. Thank you, Susan. We're coming to the end of the questions I see in the chat. So anyone, if you still have some things you're pondering over in your brain, feel free to pop in the chat before we wrap things up. I do see one question from Haley Vanderkloot about sending out this presentation material after the event. We're still confirming details on our end in terms of what material can be distributed, but rest assured we will be communicating with everyone after the event. We're going to provide as much information we can as to where to find more details about this funding, as well as who to get in touch with, and some of what was discussed here today. So stay tuned, keep your eyes on your inboxes for that. I don't see any other specific questions coming through at the moment. So Susan, unless we hear of any questions, people putting their hand up or we put something in the chat, we'll just begin kind of our wrap-up process here. Susan, if there's any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our attendees with today, I'll give you the floor, and then we'll just wrap up with some quick housekeeping.
Thank you so much. And my only final thoughts are that this can be the start of the conversation. So I completely understand. Sometimes we don't think of questions that we have until after the room closes and our virtual space is over, and we go about our day. So please know that this is the start of a conversation. If you have questions that come up later today, next week, next month, 3 months from now, just feel free to reach out to us. And I mentioned at the beginning, EMC is a small but mighty team. So I have a couple of my key employer contacts. These are colleagues of mine on the screen. So between Wendy, Carol, who is our bilingual employer engagement specialist, and myself, if you reach out to any of us, we'll either know the answer and or be able to refer you to the appropriate people at EMC to be able to answer your question. So that's about it. I also just want to ensure that I thank everyone for attending. I know how valuable time is, and I think this is happening at lunch for you as well. So thank you for choosing to spend some of your lunch break with me. We really do value and appreciate how important your time is. So thank you for choosing to spend some of that with us.
Brilliant, Susan. Thank you so much for that. And a hearty seconding of the thank you to everyone for spending your lunch break with us. I mean, this is really interesting lunch information. I don't know about you, but not only have I been fed, but my brain has been fed. But in any event, really appreciate everyone joining today. And Susan, thank you so much for your presentation. Just a couple quick things before we head out today. as we've already mentioned a couple times, we'll be sending out some information after this event. It might be closer to next week than end of this week, but we will send out follow-up information, and we encourage you guys to send any questions you have to us as well as to the EMC contacts that will identify in that email. So we'd love to take your queries. As has been touched on as well a little bit, if this is your first time encountering the topic of work and learning opportunities, SWIP funding is your first kind of foray into student funding. If you have any questions about, well, how do I hire a student? How do I engage with universities or with Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium and kind of these topics, our team would love to chat with you, talk to you about what this looks like, what opportunities are available to you, what student hiring looks like, and everything else kind of on that spectrum. We'll include our contact information in the email that goes out, and if you have any questions, if you'd like to set up a meeting, if you'd like to chat more, learn more, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions you've got and to give you the information you need to make successful decisions for your business. With that said, we're at the end of our event. Thank you so much to everyone who's attended. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn more about this valuable source of funding. And we'll go ahead and let you go. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.